Welcome to the Manhood Podcast. You hear that baby crying, you better go take care of him. Are you that father who was there for your child right from the very beginning? Yeah, you hear a little Stevie Wonder back there, right? Isn't she lovely? He wrote that about his child, his daughter that was born in 1976. I believe on this album, Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder played every instrument. So that drum riff you heard at the beginning, that was Stevie Wonder too. Let's turn the music down and get into this. Manhood, being a protector, provider, procreator, promise keeper, being a good father. It starts at the very beginning. In our last episode, we talked about being an expected father and the things that we should and should not do. And I discussed some of the things that I did as an expected father, where I succeeded and where I failed. I'm going to share more of my story today in those infant times. That baby, hopefully you were there when the baby was born. You should be in the delivery room when the baby was born. Okay, how weak your stomach is or whatever. That mother doesn't have a choice to be there or not to be there. You should not have a choice. You should be there with her during that delivery. You don't want to miss it. It is life-changing to see that baby when it's born. The, baby's born, goes down to the nursery. Maybe the next day later, you're going home with the baby. You got to figure out how to put that car seat in the back of the car first and foremost. All kinds of straps and everything. You'll figure it out. You put that little bundle of joy in the car seat and you're traveling home. You're trying to miss every bump. You don't want anybody to drive near you. You have precious cargo in that car with you. You get to the house, maybe family is there, parents, grandparents, relatives are there. You and the mother bring that bundle of joy into the house and everybody's celebrating. Oh, look, it's so beautiful. Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful baby. And everybody celebrates. Then they go home and you get ready to go to bed. You used to getting your 6, 8, maybe 10 hours of sleep a night. And 2 hours into your sleep, that bundle of joy turns into a noisemaker. Starts crying and crying and crying. And it does that every 2 hours, maybe every 4 hours. I was blessed. My children pretty much maybe after the first 2 weeks, but definitely before the end of the first month, would sleep through the night. I was one of those dads who got up in the middle of the night with my kids. Lisa, my late wife, first couple of times she got up, took care of the baby, changed him, fed him, got him back to sleep. And then she turned on the lights and started talking. It was an hour and a half later before we went back to sleep. If I'm only getting 6 or 8 hours, you're taking a third to a quarter of my time for sleeping. I'll take care of this. I could get up, take care of the baby. My head hit the pillow. I'm right back asleep. Matter of fact, during those first couple of days, those first couple of weeks, I would sleep on the couch, have a bassinet with the baby next to me. And when the baby woke up, feed him, change him, and I could go right back to sleep, even lying there on the couch. And this way she would get her sleep. I would get my sleep. She was home during the day with the baby. I would be at work. But as long as we both got our sleep, it was okay. You want to be there. And this was time that I got to bond with my child that I would not have normally gotten during the day. So I cherish that time. Infancy starts at birth. They like to say once that umbilical cord is cut, infancy starts till about 1 year. Okay. Physically, the baby changes all types of ways, 5 different ways: physically, cognitively, emotionally, socially. Language starts to develop, and their sensory motor skills start to develop during this time. So there's a lot of changes that are happening. Some people consider infancy like a plateau because from 0 to 9 months during pregnancy, that baby grows from cellular size to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds, okay, of baby in 9 months. But in that first year, that baby may actually triple its weight. Its head actually starts growing at half an inch in diameter per month. You and I have all seen babies with big heads, and we say, "Oh, that's such a cute baby." And then under our breath, we say, "The baby needs to grow into its head. The head needs to slow down, and the rest of the body needs to catch up." That happens during the infancy period. Cognitively, the baby change begins to associate things that they see, smell, with either good or bad. And they start to develop these preferences. You've seen certain babies, they won't go to certain people. I have a niece who never would go to me. She's a teenager now. We're cool. But for the longest time, and she was like that with several people, but definitely with me, she was that way. Social and emotionally, probably about 4 to 6 months, they start to show some emotion. They don't like certain foods. They start making a face. They don't like certain toys. They might start to show fear and so forth, with things that are happening with them. So those things happen in the first 4 to say 6 months. And they actually start grabbing things. They'll hold on to your finger, probably somewhere in that 4 to 6 month range. Their language, they start to coo and who within the first couple of months, but then after what is it, about 6 to 9 months, they start to try and repeat things that they hear you say. Let me put you on game, dads. This is where you teach them to say dada before they start saying mama. It's easier for them to say dada than it is to say mama. You got to put your lips together and everything else to say ma, to make that M sound. Dad, 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 dad. She ain't there. All you say all the time, dad, 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 dad. It'll give you an advantage. It's going to make her mad too. So just be ready for that as well. Their sensory and motor skills start to change. 6 to 9 months, they start crawling. They start pulling up on things. You get closer to that 1 year time period. You got to be careful. They start putting stuff in their mouth. All right. So that infancy stage is a lot of changes. They go from, drinking formula and maybe breast milk to eating baby food to trying to try out some stuff off the table, putting a little cereal in their bottle to help them sleep through the night. Consult your doctor, whoever you may. I was one of those parents who I started sneaking a spoon or half a spoon of cereal in their bottle at night very early because they wake up hungry. And if they got a little more substance than the milk, they'll sleep a little bit longer. But consult your physician. I'm not a physician. That's just what I did with my kids. Speaking of my kids, my firstborn was born in the summertime. He was born in June. First child. Lisa was, I guess we were both kind of fanatical because it was our first child. We wanted all the best. Cloth diapers. I'm not that old. There were lots and lots of, Pampers and Huggies and all of this other stuff, but we wanted cloth diapers for him. Lisa, I think, was overboard. She had him wrapped up all the time. Always, in the hospital, they put a cap on the baby's head to keep the baby warm because you lose a lot of heat through your head. She had a knit cap, a white knit cap on my son's head. She had a white knit sweater. and a white knit pair of pants on my son. And again, it's summertime. My grandmother came up from North Carolina to be with us and help take care of this first child. She's over at the house. Lisa says, well, while she has some help, she'll go to the grocery store. My grandmother can watch the baby. Now, my grandmother, God bless her, she passed away in 2020 from COVID. She was, 4 months shy of turning 105 years old. 105 years old. Amazing, amazing woman. She gave birth to 16 children. One died at birth. One was stillbirth. But she gave birth to 16. 1-6. Okay? 10 plus 6. 8 times 2. 4 times 4. 16 children she gave birth to. She was pregnant with number 16 when my grandfather passed away. God only knows how many children she would have had that man lived. Had he, I don't know how many she would have had. So she knows how to take care of a baby. I don't know too many people who have more experience than her. She's taking care of 16 of them, giving birth to 16 of them, taking care of 15 of them. She helped raise others that weren't her biological children. So she has a lot of experience in being a mother and in being a parent. Well, Lisa goes off to the supermarket, leaves my oldest with my grandmother. My grandmother took that knit hat, that knit sweater, those knit pants, and the onesie t-shirt off of this child. Went outside on the front porch, sat on the porch, laid the child across her lap. Didn't have the baby cradled, laid him across her lap, and was sitting out there on the porch in the sun. That's what they did. That's what she did with all 15 of hers. Well, Lisa comes home, sees her baby, her firstborn, laying across her grandmother-in-law's lap. She brings the groceries in. She comes out. She says, oh, I'll take them now. Very polite, very kind. I'll take them now. Takes him and puts all of that stuff back on him. Knit hat, knit pants, knit cap, onesie, and probably put a clean cloth diaper on his behind. All right. So with our first, and I'm telling this story in great detail because there's a difference when I get to the last and how they were treated. Taking lots of pictures, shower with lots of clothes and everything else, a baby shower with lots of clothes and everything else, and just doted on him and spent a lot of time with him as a baby, just to figure out what was going on. And during those formative years, although that child cannot talk, you want to bond with the child. And the way you bond with an infant, with a newborn, is typically you would cradle them and look them in their face, and they're looking at you in the face. And that brings me to my second child. Born probably 2.5 years later. So now oldest is in the toddler stage. In the next episode, we'll talk about the toddler stage. When we talk about terrible twos, they do not just last 365 days while that child is 2 years old. But we'll get to that in the next episode. We talk about infants today. This child was very different personality-wise, and you will see their personality come out even as an infant. You start to see their first child was very extroverted. You left him alone, didn't get what he wanted, was not comfortable or satisfied. Lots of noise. Verbal, made lots of noise. Second child, not so much. He made noise only when he needed you, only when something was really, really wrong. He could endure endure lots of things before he started making noise, and would try and figure out as a baby. He's trying to figure, okay, my diaper is dirty. I really don't like this. This is uncomfortable. And nobody's coming over here. I don't understand. They can't smell this. I can smell it. They can smell it. They got to be able to smell it. You can't tell me that, they're just dumb. I, I know there's another, one of me running around here, making all kinds of noise, but I'm chilling over here. Y'all need to take care of me while I'm chilling. Well, he was very, very more introverted, and you see that in his personality today. Not one that does a lot of talking and everything else, but when he talks, you pay attention. Extremely, extremely intelligent. But I could hold him and stare into his eyes. And so as a baby, I get this, toddler running around, and I can talk to him, I could do things with him. But then the second child, back to that infant stage, I probably didn't give him as much attention as I did the first child, because I was the first child, but I should have given him more. And I think we had gone on vacation on a trip when I remember distinctly he and I connecting in a very special way, just staring at him staring at me. He was probably almost 1 year old at this point, and I could feel something forming, a bond forming with this child. So it's important to spend as much time as you can. Listen, that child is an infant, 0 to 1 years old, for 365 days. Every day that you miss, you don't get back. 365, you miss a day, subtract 1. You miss another day, subtract 2. You leave early, baby sleep. You come home late, baby sleep. You're not the one getting up with them in the middle of the night, subtract another day. Those days start to add up. You go somewhere with your boys for the weekend, for a week, subtract those days. You don't get them back. You don't get them back. Spend as much time with your infant child as you can. Bond with them. And bonding may be just staring in their eyes. Speak to them. Speak to their child in normal tones. Baby talk is very, very tempting, but they're not going to learn how to talk baby talk. They will start repeating the things that you say. Now, don't try and, teach them these $5 words, but do start talking to them, interacting with them, trying to get them to hold things, and just trying to stimulate some of that growth in them. Now, 10 years later, my third child is born. So there's a gap. I got a 10-year-old, I got a 12 going on 13-year-old, and a newborn. Now, during this time, and we talked about this in the last episode of the podcast, Lisa had been diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, generalized myasthenia gravis. It's an autoimmune disorder which affects your entire body. She had started treatment for that and was taking medication before we conceived our third child. Wasn't even sure that she could conceive a child at that point. I don't know if I should say if she could conceive or we could conceive. I'll leave it as we could conceive. Wasn't sure that we could conceive a child at that time. And I talked about the prophecy and everything else and in the last episode. But this child was born with a transient of myasthenia. Myasthenia is an autoimmune disorder. It's in the same family as Lou Gehrig's disease, as lupus, as MS. All right, so it's one of those diseases, and it affects your muscles throughout your body. She had generalized myasthenia, so it affected her face, her arms, her legs, and everything else. And we weren't sure if she would be able to, one, carry a baby because it was very strenuous, two, to deliver a child. So there was a lot of anxiety going into this. And when my third child was born, and it was a girl, she had a transient of this myasthenia and was very, very lethargic. when she was born, had to go into the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. I believe it was for 3 days. She would not suck a bottle. What we had to do was put the bottle in her mouth and then put the bottle in her mouth and then pump her chin as though she were sucking it in order to get the milk to come out. And then she would swallow it. And that happened for 3 days. Lisa was feeling guilty that she had given this to this child. She was exhausted from giving birth. She did not want to go to the hospital and feed the child every 4 hours because of that. And just feeling guilty and drained. And during a normal pregnancy, there's postpartum depression. She came home and her baby was still in the hospital. That has got to be one of the most painful things to experience as a human being. Now, men, we would never experience, but as a woman, very good friends of ours gave birth to a child who was sick and in the hospital. And I forget how long, but for an extended period of time. And it broke my heart to see her come home, the mother come home from the hospital without her child. And then having to go back and forth to the hospital to visit. And then we found ourselves in a similar situation. Nowhere near as long, nowhere near as serious. That child was my godchild and passed away when she was a toddler. Back and forth to the hospital on a feeding tube and all kinds of things. Her first name was Nia. And that shook me to my core seeing that. But we found ourselves in a similar situation. And I would leave work and go to the hospital every 4 hours, even through the night, to feed my third child and pump her chin to get her to start sucking a bottle. And after 2 or 3 days, like I said, it was a transient. So it flushed out of her system after 2 or 3 days. She came home and the doctors say that she was fine. I think that laziness of not wanting to drink the bottle, and it really wasn't laziness. She was sick, but I tease her and say that to this day she's lazy. And again, she had 2 older brothers. She had parents there. There was family. First girl born to my in-laws. So my in-laws at this point had 7 grandsons, no granddaughters. They themselves had 3 daughters, no sons, 7 grandsons, no granddaughters. This was the first granddaughter. Spoiled, spoiled, spoiled rotten. She'd start crawling, and I'm getting into the toddler stage. She'd start crawling across the floor and say, well, everybody else is walking. It's taking me too long. And she would just start screaming for somebody to come pick her up, throw her hands up in the air, somebody to come pick her up. That's why I say to this day, she's still lazy and spoiled, but very proud of her. And we'll talk about her later in another episode where my kids ended up and how they ended up. But she, like the first child, was very vocal. Now, my fourth child was probably more introverted than the second one. Very, very quiet, but very, very attached, and started developing preferences to who she wanted to hold her and when. She was probably more connected to me than her mother. She wanted me to hold her. And as a dad, you got a little girl who wants you to hold her all the time. Liz, I was wrapped around her little finger. Quick story. A friend of mine, state trooper, big, burly guy, really, really tough. Really, really tough guy. He had 2 sons, and he ruled them with an iron fist. I'm not sure how old they were at the time, but I remember him He was riding down the street, sitting in his pickup truck. His kids were in the back, and one of them started crying, and he turned around and snapped his finger and said, "Suck it up." And his son went, and he sucked it up and stopped crying. I was like, "Whoa, okay." I I wasn't used to seeing something like that, but that's the relationship he had with his kids, and his kids are great kids. Turned out to be terrific men to this day. A few years later, he had a daughter, and I saw this big, strong state trooper, former military man get wrapped around the finger of a precious little girl, just wrapped. And I teased him all the time about that. And then later on, I had two little girls, and they had me wrapped around their finger. But this last one, she would cry and not stop for hours till she got what she wanted. I remember one time we went somewhere, I think we went to a basketball game or something, and we left her with this family. And she cried for 3.5 hours while we were gone. I don't know. I don't know if I got that tears to last 3.5 hours, or I could just want to hear myself cry for 3.5 hours. She cried for 3.5 hours till she got what she wanted. So this was the last child. We were in transition. We were moving from Jersey to Delaware at the time. She was born in July. We moved in September. So while we were moving, she was an infant. There were no cloth diapers. She had Pampers. She had Huggies. She had, whatever the popular brand of, the cheapest brand of plastic diapers there were at the time. The only cloth diapers she saw were the ones we wiped her mouth with, or the one we put on our shoulder while we were burping her. In the transition, also being the last child, we didn't take a lot of pictures of her. Her older sister took advantage of that when they got older and told her that because her complexion was a little different, she behaved a little different, and we didn't have any baby pictures of her, that she was adopted. Told her she was adopted, and she believed it. This is her big sister telling her she was adopted. She didn't have any proof. We actually had to, myself, my in-laws, my parents, digging around looking for baby pictures of that last child. Take pictures of your child. Nowadays, listen, we didn't have cell phones with cameras on them back then. Yeah. At that time we didn't have, so I had to check and see, okay, remember what year it was and what kind of phone I had at the time. It was probably a flip phone with no camera, or it was a BlackBerry, again, with no camera on it. But notice your children in that infancy stage. You have to be intentional about it, because they're not calling you. They're not asking you for anything. You have to go to them and spend the time with them to be a good dad. And that's my first point. Spend time with your child. Hold them, share things with them, stare into their eyes, develop that bond at the very beginning. It is so much easier to father that child once you have developed that bond. Secondly, support the mother. Do your part. And that doesn't just mean pay for stuff and financially. Do your part in fathering, parenting, shepherding that child. Like I said, I got up in the middle of the night. I was that one. I changed diapers on the last three, maybe not on the first one, as an infant. But be there, be supportive. You are a team. You were a team when you made that child. Be a team in raising that child, and that is all the activities, washing bottles, making formula, getting the diaper bag, the car seat, all of that good stuff, the baby clothes, washing, folding, all of that stuff that needs to be done to take care of that child. And then speak to that child. They talk about reading to a child while the child is in the womb. Don't stop reading to the child. Continue to read stories to the child. Start noticing what excites the child, what doesn't excite them, how their personalities are. My second son, I said, when he was young, I don't think it was while he was an infant, but he was still very young. He might have been 8, 9, 10 years old. I said, that's the child who is going to move to California and we would not hear from him as regularly, is what I said. Well, he lives on the West Coast and I don't hear from him as often as I would like to, or as often as I hear from the other three. I could see that in him as a child. And as an infant, you will start to see things developing in them. And you want to expose that child that maybe they like computers. Put a tablet in front of them. Some children will see you on your phone and start reaching for their phone, or they'll see you eating a certain food and start reaching for it. They'll see you with books. My second son, before he could read, he would lay down and pick up a book and put it in his face. And we were like, does he know what he's looking at? What is he doing? And this is probably in the toddler stage as well. So we take the book, turn it upside down, and give it back to him. And he'd turn it right side up. He developed into being an awesome reader and writer. Very, very articulate, is comfortable in any realm with any group of people, for any occasion. High academic people, out on the court. He played basketball. He was out playing at Rucker Park. Not a problem for him. Graduate of Stanford University, one of the top universities. Not a problem for him. I could see that in him when he was an infant. Start introducing your children. Start talking to them about what you would like to see. Imagine their future. You may not pinpoint it, but start speaking it to them. You're going to be a scientist. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a computer programmer. You're going to be president. Be flexible in it. Don't lock that child in, because they may start to want to do something else, and then you don't want to be disappointed when they decide to do something else. Let them be who they're going to be and encourage them in what they want to be. Be supportive of them, but start putting things in their head even as an infant. My youngest, and I'll end with this, my youngest was probably a freshman or sophomore in high school when she realized that you didn't have to go to college, that you could stop school after you graduated from high school, because it had been instilled in her from a little thing that, when you finish high school, you'll go on to college and you may possibly go on to grad school. If those are the things you want for your child, as an infant, cradle them, start talking to them about those things. Listen, thank you for tuning into the Manhood Podcast. I welcome your comments on our social media sites, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. By all means, feel free, reach out, give me your comments. I'm planning to have a couple of guests in the next couple of weeks, young people who have recently had children, and talk about this expectancy and also the infancy, and maybe we'll get to the toddler piece by then as well, and have them talk about it. I want to have a young man and a young lady come on and talk about those things, and you'll see some different things coming out in the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to try and make sure you have plenty of good content over the next couple of weeks. Again, thank you for joining me on the Manhood Podcast. Promise keeper, protector, procreator. provider. Be the man, be the father that you want to be, that you imagined that you would have when you were growing up. You can do that. Thanks for listening.